Oh, remember what Andy Warhol said?
What, I bet if I paint this can of soup, some sucker will pay $1 million for it.
After that, the thing about everybody being famous for 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Well, this is Sally's 15 minutes. Let her enjoy them.
15 minutes? Oh. Fame is so fleeting. Poor Sully.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what's the trope we're talking about today?
15 minutes of fame.
15 minutes of fame. This was something that certainly growing up in the 90s when we were all too familiar with this, with our Amy Fishers and our Tanya Hardings and stuff. Who's the one? Lorena Bobbitt.
They all have to be some sort of violent people.
Well, there was a lot of outlandish stories at the time when I was first coming up, the early 90s, when I was first getting old enough to pay attention to things going on in the news.
And to understand this idea of your 15 minutes of fame for these sort of rando famous people.
That's where my mind jumps. Tanya Harding, Amy Fisher, Lorena Bobbitt, these sort of, O.J. Simpson, although of course he obviously had a much larger than 15 minutes, but these over-the-top sort of media spectacles, say maybe like Judge Ito, remember the dancing Ito lawyers, Kato Kalin, like he's someone with 15 minutes of fame, in relation
adjacent to the OJ trial.
So obviously this concept has been with us forever, but that was my sort of 90s kid version of it. So I'll ask you off the top. We've established already, you've been a news reporter in various past lives, a DJ.
Not a DJ like we think of it today.
Right.
Like an actual radio. Like an actual radio DJ.
Those are all things that can lead somebody to be well known in their community, have a little bit of notoriety. Do you notoriety.
I wasn't notorious.
No, not like that. Do you or anyone you're close to, do you have any experience with this in your life of a real sort of 15 minutes of fame situation where someone was like, really elevated?
I probably do. And I can't just remember it off the top of my head. This will be another time. So there have been 2 other times on this podcast that you have asked me that question. And I know I should be prepared for it, but I just never prepare for it.
Well, I'll tell you what.
And I have had friends get in touch with me and be like, I can't believe you didn't tell my story. And this will happen again because I can't remember, but I'm sure it's true.
I'll tell mine. And if you remember, even at the end, you can address it at the end. Maybe we'll even pull a little editing magic.
It's not gonna come back to me.
I myself have not had what I would consider my 15 minutes of fame. I had a day where my YouTube follower count jumped by like thousands of people because of I made an animation connected to a popular podcast. But what I really think of as the connection to this in my life is my friend Brian, my old boss from one of my old jobs. He is this sort of video graphics guru.
Right.
And he's always doing interesting things. During some blizzard years ago, he projected out onto the snow in the background, like footage from a movie or something. And it created all of these wild, interesting shapes and reflections and patterns and stuff. And this thing that he put on the internet truly did go viral.
Right. And that's what I was going to say, that like now 15 minutes of fame is different. It's just going viral.
Yes, but that phrase gets thrown around a lot. And sometimes it's like, like a lot of people clicked on your video or whatever. He was like something that would happen in a sitcom. He was on local news shows. He had classrooms full of students writing him letters, asking him questions about these kinds of things. things. Like, it really was something out of a movie where it's just like, oh, should I get an agent? Should I,
should I get an agent?
I don't think he was really asking himself that, but it was just a wild thing to watch just on Facebook, his whole life kind of go wild over the course of those few days. And then, of course, just like in our sitcom characters, kind of return to the status quo, after people had, after life goes on.
Well, and I think that's what's different, right? So this whole idea of 15 minutes of fame, it comes from Andy Warhol, and it was his quote. And he said, in the future, everyone in the world will be famous for 15 minutes. And he is right. Like, that's basically what has happened with, all of our social media and the fact that everybody has a video platform and everybody can put out, like us. What do we want to talk about? Oh, let's make a podcast about it. We'll put it out there in the world and let, 200 people a week listen to it.
Well, that's just the thing, is it's sort of like everyone has it and no one has it.
Right.
Like, you could say that in any given year, I feel like, God forgive me, but the Haktua Girl was like the one example of like someone in that year that really did have the 15-minute, like, I never saw that video.
No,
I couldn't
me
pick
either.
that
I just
girl
heard about
out
it.
of a lineup.
But apparently she did get an agent and is trying to do other things and is like on a podcast something.
When we watched a Saturday Night Live episode that referenced her 3 times, all in the same end of year episode, it was like, okay, this is somebody truly having their 15 minutes of fame.
Right.
Whereas,
okay, I feel like that might be the new bar. If you're big enough for SNL to you make an SNL sketch. Kind
of. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that there are fewer of those because of the very reason you're saying.
Yes.
So many podcasts, so many news outlets and stuff that it's like everybody has their 15 minutes of something, of patronage, maybe, not exactly like fame. Yeah, it's funny. I forgot about that Warhol thing. I knew that he was the one that originated that phrase. The first experience I feel like I had with learning about the 15 minutes of fame is a show we're not going to cover, the Simpsons episode, where Bart became the I didn't do it boy. He visited the Krusty the Clown set and he knocked something over and said, I didn't do it. And they caught it on camera and it blew up and he became famous. And it was kind of playing on all the real life controversy because this was like season 1 or 2 of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
So all that stuff, you weren't allowed to wear the Bart Simpson t-shirts to school.
Right.
In the show, they were making the Simpsons t-shirts and stuff. And so, yeah, that concept, even though it is very real, I sort of learned about it, again, in addition to Lorena Bobbitt and whatnot, from sitcom episodes like this.
Well, and that's interesting. I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. But the thing that does stand out in my mind is Sugar Ray. So there was a band. There was a band back when we were in college, really, is when they were kind of got their 15 minutes or whatever. And they had been like a hard rock kind of band before they made this one song. And I don't even remember what that one song is now.
Doesn't Sugar Ray do the every morning there's a volcano coming from the day?
Sure, probably. I think you're probably right. But and like I said, I just don't really remember right now, but they named their album 1459 as though because they had that one big song and everyone was like, oh, none of the rest of their music sounds like that. So this is their one hit wonder. This is their 15 minutes of fame. And then they came out with an album of pop songs in the vein of that every morning song or whatever the big song. It might have been like, I just want to fly. It may have been that. That may have been the song that was on their other record that was all hard rock.
Gotcha.
And then that was the one that blew up. And then they came out with this album, 1459. And I thought that was a really funny, fuck you, everybody's saying I'm only going to have, I'm only going to have 15 minutes of fame. Well, here's a whole album of the stuff that you said you wanted. So we're doing a world tour.
Yeah, music is weird like that because, there's so many acts like that, especially at times like that in the 80s and 90s where they have this whole career, but for most people, they're a flash flash in the pan. But for better or worse, that Every Morning song still gets played. So it's not really a 15 minutes of fame because it does endure, even if it's like on 90s playlists.
One-hit wonders are a different phenomenon from 15 minutes. But that's what they named a whole album in response to all the headlines calling them.
No, I get it. All right, what are our shows? What did we watch?
We are watching Kate and Allie, Season 4, Episode 10, Stage Mother, Wings, Season 8, Episode 14, Just Call Me Angel, Third Rock from the Sun, Season 2, Episode 23, 15 Minutes of Dick, and 30 Rock, Season 4, Episode 7, Dealbreakers Talk Show number 0001.
Yeah, so our sort of alignment of the plots here, tracking the trope, I feel like is going to be a little bit lumpy. I feel like
it's just because the first one doesn't really fit.
The first one doesn't really fit. I'm going to argue the last one, 30 Rock, fits in a little bit of a sideways way. So,
but the middle two
the middle two are
basically the same.
Yes, but so I just want to get that out in the open. This first one is a little bit of an outlier, but it has to do with somebody getting on television.
Right.
And I think that's why we gravitated towards it, because we've only covered Kate and Allie once
one
before.
Other time, yeah.
And I feel like we both have a little bit of curiosity for it. It's very much a mom show. Our moms watched it. We talked about that.
Sure. Well, and this one was just, I was so excited about the cast in this one. So you have all of these guest stars. You have Andrea Martin, who is, beloved.
Ubiquitous character actress. She's one of these,
and
you
Broadway,
look at her IMDb, she has sometimes 4 or 5 movies in a single year.
Yeah, because she does little cameos. She does little bit parts.
Yes.
She has to be on set for 3 days and she's out.
Voiceovers and animated stuff. One of her early movies is Black Christmas by Bob Clark, arguably the first slasher movie ever. So, a storied career that lady has.
Yeah, love her. She's amazing. You know her as the aunt, like the colorful aunt in My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Well, speaking of aunts, I thought you would be interested to know that she plays the role of Aunt Miriam Pickles in the 1998 Rugrats movie.
Does she?
And to our dog's namesake.
There you go.
But anyway, she's going to be a huge part of this. I feel like we don't need to be super diligent about this plot here.
No,
Allie
but
is
then
going to...
also, hold on, before we move off it, because it's all the people that work at the station, at this TV station. She's the station manager, and then you've got Bill Cobbs, who's another storied character actor.
Definitely. He is the mysterious janitor in the Hudsucker Proxy, and he plays, not to put too fine a point on it, he plays the old black dude in many
the magical
films.
Black man in many
from the
things.
80s and 90s. Sometimes he's magical, sometimes he's just old. But he's one of these guys, like, I'm sure he did work when he was younger, but he was already kind of like a grandpa when we first started seeing him, 80s, 90s. He was an important part of the movie New Jack City. Spoiler alert, he's the one who shoots Wesley Snipes at the end. So he's just a guy, you recognize him immediately.
And he has a bit part in this. He is the camera operator, and they're linked to historical television. That's how they refer to him. And then you have Grant Shaud, who is Miles from Murphy Brown.
Yes,
he's
before
the producer
he was
in Murphy Brown.
a put-upon TV producer, he was a put-upon TV intern in this role.
He is a director. He's studying film in college, and he is like constantly underneath the camera with his hands making a little box, like he's shooting a shot.
This was, in the 80s, we were really starting to embrace that stereotype. I feel like Spielberg did that a lot. You would see Spielberg on the cover of magazines doing the thing, the framing, the image with your thumbs. You know, I feel like that stereotype was really in full effect of the movie director. And these are all the characters that work at this local TV station. Allie meets this woman, this station manager, because she gets stuck in a revolving door. Right.
Allie is Jane Curtin, because I always get them confused.
Normally I would, but this episode, you mentioned immediately when we were watching it, Kate isn't in it much because she's pregnant. The actress playing Kate is pregnant. And so they just kept saying...
Susan St. James, we see her 3 times in the episode. Twice she's on the phone with Allie, so you're only seeing her from like chest up.
Well,
And
I
the
would call it
first
shoulder
time-
pads up.
Yeah,
That's
shoulder
really the
pads
most
up.
prominent feature.
That's true. And the first time we see her, she's standing behind a mailbox, like a post office box on the sidewalk, and they're eating ice cream in, Brooklyn or Manhattan somewhere, having this conversation. And so her entire body is blocked by this.
Literally phoning
post box.
in the performance for the most part, except for that first scene. So we're just hearing everybody say, Allie, Allie, Allie. So it did actually drill into me, okay, that Jane Curtin is Allie.
Got it.
It's all kicked off because in the first scene, she's upset because somebody called her ma'am instead of miss.
Yes.
Right? I cringe whenever my dad calls waitresses miss, but I guess at this time that meant you were a young, attractive woman. And so she's on this whole thing. It's like, now that I think about it, I'm saying that because like, oh, we're going to need that information. That doesn't really
It doesn't play
this.
into the plot at all. It just sort of plays into her mindset, right? So her whole mindset is that, like, look, the way she and Kate have their setup, they're both divorced single moms, and they move in together to support one another. And Allie is the homemaker, and she is going back to school to finish her degree.
Yeah.
Because she didn't. She gave up her career to support her husband. And then Kate, played by Susan St. James, she's the breadwinner. She's a travel agent. She's got a career. So that's how they split the labor in the house. Was they kind of like one person has the job, one person takes care of the kids, and that's the setup for the show.
Right. Importantly, they both have daughters about the same age.
Exactly. And so Kate is a travel agent, and the reason she's not in the episode in the land of the story, not in the land of the real, right? In the land of the story is that she has an important business trip that she's going on out in San Francisco, so she's got to be there. So that makes Allie, Jane Curtin's character, feel like everybody has things going on, and she's just this homemaker going to school.
Standard sitcom thing. I feel old. I feel boring. I don't have anything going on. So
exactly.
When she fortuitously gets stuck in the revolving door with this sort of sassy, spunky lady who's telling her, I work at she's carrying a crazy plant or something.
Yeah, she's carrying a big plant and also a doorbell on a box.
A disembodied doorbell that still rings. And she explains, these are props. I work at the television station. I'm actually, I'm the props girl, but I'm also the this and the that because I'm the station manager. I used to be the assistant. The station manager got fired, blah, blah, blah. And like we keep saying, she's this spunky lady. She reminds me of Mindy Sterling, we mentioned from some of the other things, or like a Rhea Perlman type. Like they would be good sisters, these sort of spunky, she has a little bit of a New York vibe. I don't know where this show takes place.
It takes place in New York.
But
So yeah, she works at the local cable station called Channel G.
Right.
And it's so funny, like they're making they make multiple jokes at cable's expense. This is 1989.
If you've seen the movie UHF, like it's that kind of vibe.
But she's like, oh, nobody watches us. It's cable. You know what I mean? Like they keep talking about how like, oh, it's cable. Nobody watches. Oh, it's cable. It's this.
And this is the reason why the show doesn't really fit the 15 minutes of fame thing.
Right.
Because nobody gets famous on this.
Exactly. But so what we have in parallel to this is Allie's daughter is singing in a talent show and she's doing really well. She happens to sing the song Tomorrow.
Can we
from
pause
Annie.
on that? Why is it always tomorrow? Like when I'm thinking specifically about the movie You've Got Mail, where the little niece sings Tomorrow at the family gathering, and our friend David Poehler, when he got on Jimmy Fallon, spontaneously sang Tomorrow with him. Remember, like, why is that
There you go. There's a 15 minutes of fame, right?
Yeah, really. More like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
But like, why is it always that song when it's like somebody doing an audition or something? Give me a few bars, and they always do Tomorrow.
And they always do Tomorrow. I can't answer that because it's definitely not a public domain song.
No, especially not at this time.
But I can answer it for this show. The actress who plays the daughter was in Annie when she was younger.
Like a stage version of it?
On Broadway.
So is she Andrea McArdle?
No, she's just a kid. Andrea McArdle's like a little bit older than her, I think.
That makes sense, but yeah, I just noticed that. And I noticed later they show the sheet music, and it's like the officially branded Annie font and everything.
Yeah, what you would buy at the store if you were going to sing it.
Yeah, I think it honestly is just like the movie of Annie had come out just a few years prior, and I think it's almost the opposite of it being in public domain. It's like a thing that everybody knows.
Yeah,
you know?
And maybe that's it. Maybe they were just nice. They were nice enough to license it a lot. Maybe they're easy with the licensing, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
So she is singing in the talent show, and Allie's just like, wow, she's amazing. And then the drama teacher leans forward and says to her, you know, if with the right training and the right support, I think this girl could really go somewhere. And she's like, and all of a sudden, Allie's like, really? And then she runs into this woman the next day, and that's it. She's like, okay, I'm going to make my daughter famous. This is the thing I'm going to do because I've got to have something in my life.
Yeah. This woman, when she initially got stuck in the elevator or in the revolving door, she was on her way to class. And the woman was like, why don't you play hooky and come hang out? And this whole thing just falls into place. Like, does Allie actually take a job at the station, or does she just kind of hang out there?
Well, so
like,
that first
it ends
day,
with her being
right, exactly.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that very first day, she is all excited to learn more, and she's very curious and interested, and so she says, okay, I'll come with you once they get out of the revolving door.
Yeah, so let's just get to it. The title of the show is called Stage Mother.
Yeah.
That's really the trope that this is. The meat of this show is going to be about Allie, basically forcing her daughter to sing on this show. She does it. I guess it just sort of goes okay, but the whole idea is like...
No, she sounds great. Like, she does a good job. But her daughter is not interested. And we get this whole montage up to the point...
This was the fun
where
part.
she sings on the show, where this is where Allie is being the annoying stage mom. She's just like, watch that pitch, keep practicing. Like,
she keeps going
all
we
over
should
the
say
house.
The other one's daughter, Kate's daughter, she's her accompanist.
Yes.
So she's playing the piano. And so it's just, like you said, it's this montage of them constantly practicing while Allie's off in the kitchen, cooking, but also like sort of cracking the whip.
And like giving them notes.
Yeah, there's a part where she goes,
watch
tempo,
the
girls,
tempo.
Yeah, but then they do actually sort of meet her satisfaction. And by the end of the montage, she's kind of smiling like, all right, I think they're going to make it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all just established that Kate is living vicariously through her daughter. Yeah. This is all sort of out in the open. It's not one of these sitcom things of like the daughter has to eventually come out with it. Like, she's saying straight up, I don't really like this. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And their solution, they bring, we forgot an important part of this, that as we were meeting this station manager played by Andrea Martin, she says, my sort of dream, my vision for this TV station, and bear in mind, this is like mid-80s.
Pre-Oprah.
Yeah.
This is 1989.
Yeah. She's like, I want to have a show where everyday people come on and just talk about things, just talk about their
problems,
lives.
And we'll get people to call in, and we can get the audience to chime in. And it was like basically Oprah.
Well, I was going to say, maybe it starts out as Oprah. It turns into Jerry Springer. When Allie...
I don't know about Jerry Springer. There was no fighting.
Well, that's the thing. It didn't ultimately happen, but when...
It turned into Donahue.
When Allie brings the daughter to the station the next time, and she's like, they have this fight right there in front of the station manager.
Right.
So they're all like mad at each other.
The daughter sings tomorrow, and then she wants her to come back and perform again, and she doesn't want to do it. And so they march her in. Allie takes her back to the station and is like, you have to tell this Andrea Martin character, you have to tell her that you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, if this is how you're going to be. And she was hoping that Andrea Martin's character would like help convince her. And instead she just is kind of like, ooh,
this should be the show.
You guys should have this argument on camera.
And this is why I say Jerry Springer, because she goes, this is what I want in my show. Family, all of it. The fighting, the kicking, the biting. So I feel like it doesn't end up going down that way, but I feel like her vision of this is is kind of like a crazy Jerry Springer show.
Well, that's funny because I didn't hear that. That must have come the second time she described it. The first time she described it, it was very much like Oprah and Donna.
Oh yeah, like she wants, or even just like sort of like local
like a
interest.
sit-down chat
yeah,
show.
Yeah. There's like my friend Morgan's Conversation with Morgan show, or even like a Wayne's World for that matter.
Right.
Again, it's so funny that this is like a revolutionary concept because this sort of became any old podcast or daytime talk show or anything,
right.
you know.
Well, so this is what she wants to put on the air. And so she's like, when she sees this argument happening in real time, she's like, oh, okay. What do we have to bump so we can get this on the air? Yeah. Switches versus dimmers, it'll be better at night. Let's push them till later. So then they have a sit down and they decide to call it Mothers and Daughters. And then they have their argument right there on camera.
This is very much like the podcast that I went on a couple of weeks ago to talk about my film project. And
like,
this was...
We'll take some calls.
Well, no, they didn't take
nothing
calls.
Ringing.
But the way that this studio is with them sitting in this white room in front of the bookshelf, you know, with their sort of angled 45 degrees towards each
like
other.
There's cameras to record you.
Yeah, that's sort of like, that kind of like we're taking calls thing. But the thing I noticed about this, the way they take calls on their show is they pick up a receiver from a telephone and talk into it, which I've never seen.
No, it was very
on a TV
strange.
show.
I didn't understand it either. And it was like everybody could hear what was on the receiver, even though it was making it sound like it was just coming through the receiver.
Yeah.
It was not very well done.
It made no sense. But so the argument that they put forward is so simple and basic, where Allie, the mom, is like, I think that a teenage girl should respect her mother. And then the daughter's like, and I think a 17-year-old woman isn't a child anymore and she should be allowed to make her own decisions. And it's just like, it's perfectly like genuine, but it is like a pretty straightforward, like parents versus kids.
Right. And what do you guys think?
Yeah, they want people to call in, and nobody calls at first. So we get this is a subtrope we have to track. The Robin Williams-esque character sneaking away to make a phone call in a weird, funny voice, trying to sound like a Middle Eastern person or something.
Right. Well, and we established that she does this all the time. Andrea Martin does this all the time at the very beginning when we were the first time we were at the TV station, because she was like, oh, I have to go on air now. I am I pretend to be this like relationship doctor, sex therapist, and she gets her hair all mussed up.
That was very
and
funny.
She puts on these big glasses and she does like a Dr. Ruth kind of
that was totally
like
an 80s era SNL's. Like I could totally see Dana Carvey doing that. And again, the set for it looks like an SNL version of a public TV thing.
So they're having the calls and then she goes, nobody's calling. So she leaves the studio and she's like, oh, I have to go check the phone lines. I think maybe something is wrong. And then she steps out of frame, goes into the control room, calls the phone from the other phone and is doing a funny voice.
Yes, very much like if you remember the montage in Mrs. Doubtfire where Robin Williams is calling as all of the bad prospects going like, I would like a job, please.
Right,
like, doing all these weird, like, broken English voices.
Yes, she calls twice in a row with different voices. One saying like the mother, I think the mother is right. I think we should respect the mom. She's making good points, whatever. And then the other one is like, I think you're totally right to the daughter. Yes. And she does this doing like a fake like teenager. A Heather's kind of, gag me with a spoon kind of voice. And then they start getting some real callers. Yes. And the real callers are like, you know what? We'll solve this. Make the mom sing.
Yeah, this whole thing is just stemming from the fact that the mom, Allie, wants her daughter to sing on this show.
Right.
And so they all say, make the mom sing. And then, at one point, the brother, who we haven't mentioned because he doesn't do much in this, the little brother calls in and he pretends to be somebody who's saying,
he talks in like a deeper voice. He's like, the mom should sing.
Yeah.
And, and so then that's what happens. Allie gets up there and she sings Tomorrow badly, which is also a fun, because we know that Jane Curtin can sing.
Yeah.
So it's fun to
It's
like
one of
watch her
those
sing off
TV
key.
off-key sort of singing things. Yeah.
But I think the thing that ties this show with our other shows is the way that the idea of fame, even just a little bit of it, or just like proximal fame, right? Because she's doing all this for her daughter, so her daughter can be famous. That is and can be irresistible to the point that it changes people's personality.
Yeah, exactly. It's a corrupting force. And so again, it's there's not a ton of it, but that whole thing of Jane Curtin being all like, now ladies, you need to practice and stuff.
Being like
and,
Mama Rose, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And just sort of forcing, I feel like we're going to get a sort of semi-gypsy reference later in 30 Rock too.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of forcing the daughter to do this against her will. Absolutely. That corrupting influence of that sort of ambition or, need for attention or anything.
Exactly.
And then beyond that, it
just ends, like you said, with her realizing that the only reason she was doing any of this in the first place was because she was feeling unfulfilled and she was trying to like live it out through her daughter. And then Andrea Martin is like, well, I mean, why don't you just come work here? And she's like, she had said, I do this for free. That's what Allie had said. And Andrea Martin's like, great, we need somebody to do it for free. You're hired. And she's like, oh, great, what do I do? And she's like, push the piano. And that's the end.
Yeah. And so this is, I guess in the Kate and Allie verse, this is also them sorting out, what do we want her job to be? What do we want the stories to be and stuff? I don't know how much they follow up on this.
I would say we're getting to the end of the series. I think this is the last season. So they're about midway through the last season.
Yeah. Well, I do like that as a through line. So let's see how it continues with Wings.
Season 8, episode 14, Just Call Me Angel.
Yeah, so just right there. Good job, Wings, making it to season 8. I was surprised. I honestly thought it was a mistake when I started looking up the show, partially because the whatever streaming service it was on only carries up to 5, so we had to rent it. But yeah,
this is what the last time we covered Wings, because we only talked about it once before, we got into a little bit of an argument because I think this is a cute, good show. Yeah. And I stand by. I'm like, it ran for a while. It ran for like 8 or 9 seasons. And you were like, bah, bah, bah. You were not interested at all. So this is a much later episode.
Oh, yeah.
But what we watched before was it was early enough that we didn't have Tony Shalhoub.
We had just met him in that episode. He was at the restaurant.
But he wasn't his character. He plays a different person.
Okay.
That was his guest starring role, and then they liked him so much in that they brought him back later that season or the next season in Antonio. That's the character he plays now, and he becomes this major character. I mean, he's one of the ensemble, and he becomes one of the guys. He works, he drives a taxi, so he's always at the airport just kind of hanging out. So he becomes one of like the main cast of characters after we saw him in that. So we were still sort of in like the first half of Wings at that point, but we were far enough along that Helen and Joe were already dating. Now Helen and Joe are married. And we're in season 8. And so Amy Yazbek has joined the cast. She's the redheaded woman who was married to John Ritter in real life. And she joins the cast. She is Helen's sister that went off, left the island, married somebody super rich. Then he cheated on her. And then now she has like moved home and is penniless or whatever because she's just like, got screwed by this fancy man that she had married. So that's her story, and we see her little blips of her. But the main thrust of this episode is a conflict between the two brothers.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, we talked about our Lorena Bobbitts, our Tanya Hardings. This one is like presaging Sully.
Yeah.
Right? We get this guy. This is not about somebody going on TV. This is a real life 15 minutes of fame. And this is something positive. This isn't a scandal. This episode starts with Tim Daly and Steve Weber, Joe and Brian. They're on a plane back, a commercial flight that they're passengers on. They're coming back from Vegas We get all of the sitcom character-y stuff that reminds us one of them's the crazy wild man, one of them's the uptight guy, you know, who thinks that you're wasting your time if you go to Vegas and all you do is gamble and chase women and watch shows. You
and
know,
drink too much.
Yeah, all those kind of jokes.
The best thing about Las Vegas is all the perks of the hotel, like the buffet and the gym.
Yeah, so we get all that usual character stuff, and then we get there's talk about food poisoning, right? Tim Daly's not feeling well because he think he ate something wrong, and we get both of the pilots. We get Captain Ramirez and Captain Sidon, both one by one run out of the cockpit into the bathrooms at the back of the plane.
Right, and Joe says that buffet was great. I saw both of the pilots there before we left. So it was a great buffet. I don't know what you're talking about. It couldn't be that's upsetting my stomach. And then boom, the pilot runs by. Boom, the co-pilot runs by. Joe runs back to go start throwing up.
Yeah, and so there's this old lady character, another passenger on the plane that they establish here. And, you know, when the first pilot runs back...
She's sitting next to, who is it, Steve Young, who was the San Francisco 49ers quarterback at the time, I think.
Yeah, and he didn't, they made a point of introducing him. He played into the rest of the episode a little bit, but not that much.
Not really. It was just like he was a passenger on the plane.
Yeah, but he is a real athlete, I'm pretty sure. You can tell by his acting style. But so this old lady, after the first pilot runs to the back, is like, stewardess, flight attendant.
Who's flying the plane?
Yeah, who's flying the plane? And she's like, oh, don't worry. Obviously, Captain Ramirez, our trustworthy co-pilot is flying, and then he runs in the back, and so we get these great moments with the stewardess knocking on the bathroom doors, and one of them goes, I want to die, and then the next one goes, Mommy! Yeah. And
that was very funny.
Just so I understand this, so they say the way you would say, like, is there a doctor in the house? The flight attendant says, can anyone fly a plane? And of course, our main characters are pilots. And so Steven Weber, Brian volunteers to fly. But so do we understand that these two pilots were basically committing suicide by running into the back?
No, they were leaving on autopilot.
Yeah. That's what, I'm not a pilot.
But autopilot can't land the plane.
Okay, so that's, I get, you get what I'm saying though. It's like, if the stewardess is going like, oh my God, both pilots are gone, we need somebody to fly this plane or else the plane is going to crash. Did the pilots just not think about that?
I'm sure that they did. This is a TV show, Jay.
Right. So they were just like...
No, I think just like in cases of a medical emergency or when something like the autopilot can fly the plane so far, but it can't once you get into airport airspace and you have to be in contact with the ground control, like air traffic control. Then a person, has to be able to fly the plane to navigate for landing and manually do the landing gear.
Yeah, so I'm saying when that second pilot decided to get up and run back to the bathroom,
maybe he was just like, it's fine for now because I'm going to get all this out and I'll be able to go back and maybe land the plane.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought initially, but then I was like, oh, but then why does the flight attendant think that is not on that same page?
Because it's a TV show.
Yeah. So that's basically the last that we get to see. This is classic sitcom. Everything happens off camera, right? We basically see Steven Weber say, oh, don't worry, I'm a pilot. And then the next thing we see is...
Oh, yeah. And then Steve Young is like, wait, I saw him pass out on my hotel floor this morning.
Right. Because that was part of this joke at the very beginning where he's like, I didn't even make it to the hotel room. I passed out at some other hotel. But yeah, the next scene is back at the airport, and there's already a mob of people waiting for them like they're the Beatles or something, because the news has traveled. There was this emergency and a passenger flew the plane, and the old lady, when she gets off and everyone's interviewing them and everything, she coins the phrase, he was the angel of Flight 28.
Right. Well, what's interesting about this is that commercial planes don't land at that airport.
Okay.
So he landed that plane in Boston and then got on a little hopper and came to Cape Cod or wherever they are on this little island. And so
that's why there was already this reception.
And
for him.
only the one lady, as you see people getting off the plane, like Steve Young isn't there, like all the other people that were on that original commercial flight aren't at the airport.
So what is their job? They're like cargo pilots?
No, they are small plane pilots for that little island. It's like they're like a private plane kind of a thing, but not exactly a private plane because they aren't privately owned. It's just small flights.
Well, nonetheless, his skills were able to transfer. He was able to land this plane. He is, again, years before Sully, he is like that kind of figure. And this is where we get all the stuff we were talking about, the cliches of, oh, he's wanted for endorsement deals. He needs to get an agent because they're going to want him to do commercials for an angel cake. They're going to want all kinds of action figures and stuff. We get the classic 80s and 90s sign of a douchebag, which is having a cellular phone and taking it out and going, talk to me.
Yeah, this is 1997. So still, you know, I think it was basically Zach from Saved by the Bell. And, you know, like famous people that had cell phones.
Like Charlie Sheen.
The movers and shakers in
Charlie
Hollywood.
Sheen in Wall Street or something, a stockbroker. So he's answering the phone saying, talk to me. He's getting an agent.
Go for Brian.
Yeah, he's too busy to fly his planes. Like he's shirking all of his shifts and going, oh, can you do that? Can you fly that
and
route?
then people are canceling because they only bought a ticket so they could fly with the angel.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, of course, we have the parallel story you were saying about the Joe and the woman that was first his girlfriend, now his wife or whatever. His whole thing is that he was, and this is not necessarily a storyline that ages super well, he passed out and had to be carried to safety by the old lady. All of this we didn't get to see, but it's emasculated him. And it's not that he feels emasculated, it's that his wife is now turned off by him. She's got the ick because she learned this story that he passed out and wasn't heroic like the other guy was.
Right. Well, he had food poisoning too. So he was also in the bathroom. He was also incapacitated, which is why Brian ended up flying the plane. But yeah, so Helen hears about Brian and is like, oh, Joe was on that flight. He's a pilot too. He must have done something great and must have helped. And then come to find out that he was unwell and they're making fun of him because he bought this travel kit that looks like a makeup case.
Oh, yes. That's a running thing. So this is like the running gag. But I mean, yes, that is the side story. But to me, the story here is the conflict between the two brothers. It's that Joe is resentful of all of this fame coming Brian's way and all of this acclaim for him being a pilot coming his way, when Joe is like, I'm the one who keeps this business up and running. He's such a flibberty gibbet and now he's getting all the attention and everybody wants to like celebrate him and want him, and I'm the one that makes this business work. Like, I'm the stable one. I'm the one that should be considered the hero. We both know how to fly a plane.
Right.
Granted, I was passed out in the bathroom that time, but like this guy doesn't have anything on me. Like he is, you know, just like you said, he's the irresponsible one.
Yeah.
Another pretty standard sitcom thing, you know, especially with siblings.
Well, and that is kind of the core that happens in a lot of these episodes. It's this sort of sibling conflict. And the last time we watched one of these episodes, we didn't get a lot of that because it was focusing on the relationship and the Valentine's Day or whatever. I think that's what we watched it for, Valentine's Day or something.
Yeah.
So we didn't watch an episode that had that at the center, and then this time it did. And so I didn't want you to like go on past it, because to me, that's kind of like the heart of this show is the conflict between the two brothers. And then you have Faye, who is the older woman that does their bookings and is like their front desk kind of clerk person. And she often acts like their surrogate mother and is trying to like mitigate the conflict between the two of them. And then we've got a nice little moment with Antonio, played by Tony Shalhoub, where he's saying, oh yes, Brian is wonderful. We just moved in together. And so then everybody just assumes that they're gay.
Yeah, it's interesting you refer to the gay panic joke as a nice moment.
No, I meant a nice acting moment.
Yeah, definitely.
We get a nice little acting
Tony
moment.
Shalhoub is hilarious, of course. But yes, that is the most dated aspect of this episode is it's not just one, these frequent recurring things of him going, telling the news reporters, we just moved in together. I'm walking on sunshine now.
And the reporters are like, we're so happy for you. You must be so happy. He's like, yeah, I'm walking on sunshine.
Yes, and we, the audience, are supposed to be cracking up because, they think they're gay.
Right,
it's a very 90s thing. But point well taken. And like I said, the beginning on the plane just really establishes, for me anyway, yes, this is your tried and true odd couple.
Yes.
And this story, again, tried and true sort of path for them to take. And this middle part is going to be all the things you would expect, like we already said.
He gets the big head, his personality, all of the his worst demons, not his better angels, his worst angels are what's guiding him.
Yeah.
And he's just all in his own, into himself.
He floats the idea of you should think about replacing me, get a new pilot,
because this is going to be a big deal. And then we get a cat.
Yes.
Right?
Well, this is, I feel like anytime you've got this story, the 15 minutes of fame thing, the moral is always going to be fame is a fickle friend, right? That you don't want to put too much stock in it. So no sooner does he get done saying, basically, I'm going to be a professional celebrity, right? I don't need to do this job anymore.
No, I'm going to Kim Kardashian this. I'm going to turn this into the whole career.
Exactly. And then they find out that there was... they're watching the news or something. There was a fire. I think someone comes in and explains to them first. There was a fire and a cat managed to save a family somehow. And then we see on the television broadcast, the family is standing there explaining, the point is that,
he's been replaced by a cat.
Yes. That there's, before there was pizza rat, there was fire cat is what they're calling it. All of the endorsement deals wash up again. This scene is right out of the playbook of anything like this, where he's on the phone going, well, okay, if that deal isn't going to go through, if they want the cat instead, then we'll just do the other thing. Oh, wait, the other thing is going away also? Huh. And you're seeing right before your eyes, everything's coming down. And then so we get, the two brothers and the pep talk. And this is the first time in this lineup that we're going to have the trope be called out verbatim by the character. Tim Daly says, your 15 minutes of fame is over, but, that doesn't mean that what you did doesn't matter. Of course, all of a sudden now he's deflated, so they have to switch places, right? Now he doesn't have a big head anymore. He's down in the dumps. The brother, Tim Daly, has to go, no, you saved everybody. You did a good job. Yes, the media forgot about you. You're not a celebrity anymore, but, everybody...
We love you, and we're not going to forget about you.
Yeah, the people who were on the plane that didn't crash still like you, and, it's just like all these sitcom status quo things. You're back where you started, nothing gained, nothing lost, next episode.
Next episode, right? Exactly.
Yeah, so look, to your original thing about the sort of quality of the show, this was fun. I will say I'll stand by.
I'm so glad that you saw one that you liked.
Yeah, I feel like I liked it last time. I liked the aspect where they were all running around. The thing that I'm sure I said last time that I'll say again is that for me, Steven Weber and Tim Daly are not top-notch presences to build a sitcom around. They're not bad, but it's just, I feel like I always go to this comparison, but Schitt's Creek, you give me Eugene What's-His-Face, Dan Levy, Catherine O'Hara is just yes, I will watch it for hours because they are so good. And this cast, Tony Shalhoub notwithstanding, is just not on that level to me. And we talked about last time.
We didn't get any Lloyd in this episode. Thomas Hayden Church.
okay, like we talked about last time, because I'm familiar with Steven Weber from all these other things where he is, even though he's good, he has that career of a little bit of an also-ran, a little bit of like a second string guy. And like, he's good. Like, once he stopped trying to be a leading man and would show up as the sort of like semi-heavy in Studio 60 or, show up as the Russian mobster and Party Down.
We're going to get him on the next season of White Lotus. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're describing Walter Goggins.
Yeah, I guess like what I'm saying is that like I think that he's really good, but he doesn't have that thing that's like you can hang this whole show on him and it'll work for me. And so that's why I'm not like, oh, sign me up for the premium package. I'm going to watch all of them. But I did like this. This was fun for sure.
I am glad.
All right, let's move on to Third Rock from the Sun.
Season 2, episode 23, 15 Minutes of Dick.
Yeah, so I'm sure that the other times we've talked about Third Rock from the Sun, I've voiced how I struggle a little bit with John Lithgow in this role, in this setting. And I feel like now I'm here to say conclusively that even though I really like John Lithgow and he is a great actor and a one-of-a-kind presence, I kind of, everything I said about Steven Weber as the center of a sitcom, for me, it kind of applies to John Lithgow too. I don't really look forward to watching Third Rock from the Sun, and it's because I don't really, like, this whole cast doesn't totally work for me, even though they're all good. And I think it starts with John Lithgow as just being he just kind of gets on my nerves in this. And I know this is the same actor that I've seen in all different parts and great movies and stuff, but something about his
the character is purposefully annoying. It's
certainly
the character.
purposely clueless.
No, but it's like that character is written and he is playing it in such a way that he is consistently the fly in the ointment. And so as a viewer, you're watching it being like, oh my God, just stop doing it. You're the problem. And you never really like feel bad for him or feel on his side, even in the storylines that center around him. Like, I think the first one we watched was where he was like trapped in a box and there was a doppelganger of him.
Which is referenced in this one.
Right. And so I think that was really great because we got to see some amazing mime.
Yeah.
He
got to be the evil dick.
And he got to be the evil dick. So you got to see different like parts of his the way he acts. And there was less of him in that episode. But what is a through line throughout this whole series is that his ego and his insecurities are what get in the way of this team of aliens who are on Earth to do research actually having any type of success. And they're all quirky in their own ways, but it is his like ineptitude that always kind of puts things down. And he, in this, at the very beginning, they're all going out to dinner because they're celebrating. He wants them all to celebrate his major achievement. He was published in a book. He's in the college yearbook as a professor where he teaches.
That's funny.
And that's what they're doing. And so, but the aliens, his crew, French Stewart,
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Did he always have such long hair in this? I knew he always had floppy hair.
He had long hair, I think, almost all the way up until the very end. It may have been that very last season that he cut it for something else. He was in like 500 Days of Summer or something, the last. And
he's in Halloween H2O, and I feel like it's still floppy, but I just didn't remember it being like headbanger
super long, like down to his shoulders, like not Foo Fighters,
Faith No More.
I was going to say Dave Grohl from back when he was in Nirvana, like that's how long his hair was.
Or early Foo Fighters.
Yeah. And so, but he always had that in this show. That was like the look. That was like his teenage look.
Yeah.
Because he got put in the teenage body. You know,
and I think he's a great actor in general, but I don't see much of him. Not that he does anything bad in this, but he just doesn't do much.
Haven't, and that's the thing. There are some episodes that center more around him, and we haven't watched any of those for this show yet, or for our podcast yet. So, you know, that's where we are with that. But this one's a fun one because it centers on Sally. Yeah. And I always like the ones that center on someone else because of what we just discussed with John Lithgow, which I say go and you say gal, and I'm not sure which is right. So we're just going to have to annoy all the listeners with our alternate pronunciations throughout the entire time. So I like the ones that don't center on him for exactly that reason. I too find the character he is playing annoying. I think he's doing a masterful job at it, so I still enjoy watching it. But yeah, Dick is not likable.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, everything you're saying is true. I think for me, it has the added thing of what makes John Lithgow so he's just one of those performers. He has a voice like no one else. He has a mannerism like no one else. Yeah. And this part harnesses that in a way that just doesn't vibe with me right. And I just go like, oh, his voice is annoying me. You know, that same voice that in a certain other role in a movie is so effective.
Right. And I would venture to say that means he is doing his job.
Oh, sure. For whatever reason, they're just, there are characters that are buffoons that we enjoy. Sure. And then others that were like, okay, yeah, I've had enough of you. But anyway,
and that's fair. So anyway, they're celebrating him and they are asked to move their table from the center of the dining room over to a back corner. And they keep getting hit, like French Stewart keeps getting hit by the bathroom door. Sally and Joseph Gordon-Levitt keep getting banged by, like keep getting bumped into by the wait staff because there is like the bathroom door and the entrance to the kitchen is right there. So yeah, so they're very unhappy and Sally decides she's going to stand up for herself and she's like, I don't care if this Mark Hamill guy was in Star Wars. He doesn't just get to come in and take our table. We're here having a special night too.
Yeah, so huge overlapping trope here. We've got a celebrity guest star, right? They've been relegated to this other table to make way for celebrity Mark Hamill, who was at a very interesting point here. He's a very interesting movie actor and career in general. Obviously, he's Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, one of the most iconic, you know, totemic popular characters, movies of our lifetime. It started a little bit before our lifetime. And then similar to Carrie Fisher and everybody else from that movie except for Harrison Ford.
I was going to say, he didn't pal up with Steven Spielberg, and that's why.
Yeah, well, he didn't, He struggled to have the movie star career that you might expect after being in that movie. His next most successful thing after that is he is known to lots of people as the voice of the Joker in the Batman animated series from the 90s and from lots of things they did after that. And then, of course, he's in the new Star Wars movies, the J.J. Abrams ones. At this time in the 90s, this was when he was in the computer game Wing Commander 3 that I got for Christmas in like 94. Like he was, and I don't mean that to be like, yeah, he's doing this and that, but he was not like an A-list actor at this time. He was doing random stuff. So it
because he
sense.
Was Luke Skywalker and he got kind of pigeonholed in certain ways.
Yes, a claim to fame as opposed to the beginning of like a proper movie star career. And so it makes perfect sense that he would do this guest appearance in Third Rock from the Sun, a show about
1997,
aliens. Yeah,
right before the re-releases were coming out.
Well, yeah, they credit him. So when they're reading the newspaper article the next day about how Sally stood up to Mark Hamill, the newspaper headline specifically credits Mark Hamill as the star of the Star Wars special editions. And I just thought like, oh, I bet that was Lucas or 20th Century Fox or someone being like, hang on. If you want to mention Star Wars, you know, you have to mention Star Wars special editions coming to theaters November 10th or whatever.
This show came out December 97. When did the re-releases happen?
Yes, those special editions were, exactly this time.
I was going to say, I remember I was still in high school when the first one came out because I have have always had a lot of friends who were super into the Star Wars, and it was a big thing. Everyone went. We made a night of it. I think we watched one at their house, at my friend Bryn's house, and then we went to the theater and saw the new version.
Yep, you got to see that Yoda said something different before he lifted up the spaceship, and there was more CGI.
It was never a time that I wished more for gummies, I think, in my childhood.
Yeah, but so they cannot just say Star Wars star Mark Hamill. They have to say Star Wars Special Edition star Mark Hamill. There's a part where there's one of those Star Trek, Star Wars jokes that I feel like were really ubiquitous in the 90s.
Yes.
People confusing.
Oh, he's in the Star Trek.
But so the way this goes down, again, typical sort of 15 minutes of fame style. After you do something noteworthy, you get invited on a talk show. Right.
So she basically she picks up Mark Hamill and throws him to the table where they are. Yeah. And so that she and her family can have the good table back.
Physically subdues Mark Hamill.
Right. And so then, again, just like in Wings, we don't see any of, we only see the toss. We see Mark Hamill, in the lap of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, what's happening here? And then it's the next day and they're reading the paper and she has said, I may be a nobody, but I'm still somebody. And that's the rallying quote. Everyone is like, oh, who is this woman, Sally, who's standing up for all of us nobodies? We still matter. Celebrities don't just get to come in and take tables away from us. This is really crappy. And so that's why she gets invited on the talk show.
Yeah, she goes on the talk show. She's a big hit. That's where they go. Somebody calls in and goes, you should be in the next Star Trek movie. And then we get our second example of the fake caller with the Southeast Asian accent.
Right.
We get I would like to talk to you, please.
Yes, exactly. John Lithgow is very upset. Dick is very upset that Sally has taken away his big moment. He was published. Yes. He is in a book.
Yes.
Don't you understand?
Unlike Tim Daly in Wings.
Exactly. And so he's very upset. And he talks to double dose of Jane Curtin, by the way, because Jane Curtin is his office partner and love interest in this show.
She works at the university, and also our second instance of somebody saying 15 minutes of fame in the show. She explains this concept.
She does. And what happens in every single one of these Third Rock from the Sun episodes is that Dick or someone else in the family misunderstands the human phenomenon that is being explained to them. He literally understands that she will only have 15 minutes of fame, and he is giddy that 15 minutes is almost over. And then she goes on the talk show, and the talk show goes really well, and it's outside the 15 minutes, and he is very distraught, very upset. He's been watching his watch. He's waiting for the fame to disappear. And then he decides, since no one's paying attention to him, that, of course, they were there celebrating him. So, of course, she'll mention that. So he has to go to the TV station with her. And he goes, and he's relegated to the couch. And he asks some PA, oh, is this where you take, reaction shots of the family? Yeah. And the guy's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so they're not paying attention to him. And so we get a call in, and the call is coming from inside the studio. We see John Lithgow hiding underneath the craft services table, speaking with an Apu kind of sounding voice. I would
again refer you to any given Robin Williams film from the 1980s or 90s for the sort of humor that they're going for. And and then continuing the subtropes, French Stewart becomes the agent, right? We get this thing of him being like, okay, you're going to need me to handle all your appearances or whatnot.
And Sally goes full Norma Desmond.
Norma Desmond, yes. I was wondering at first, it starts with her sort of revealing herself. We're back at the house now after her talk show appearance goes so well. And she comes out wearing a turban. We just randomly watched the movie Soap Dish a few weeks ago, and it's all about about Sally Field freaking out that she's getting older and that the costumer is dressing her up in turbans, and she makes the remark, "Oh, do you want me to look like Norma Desmond?" So Sally reveals herself wearing a turban, and I guess she's just a very tall woman because
she is.
She comes out, she's wearing this full body.
She's got a high-waisted gown on that has a train as well. Yeah. And because it's not quite an empire waist, which is where it comes up underneath your bosom, it's at her waist. But she is short-waisted and has very long legs.
It looks like she's on stilts.
Yeah, so because this is such a high-waisted dress, it's legs for, not even legs for days.
She's on heels, but she's not, it looks like she's on
full-length
stilts.
skirt. Exactly, it's a full-length skirt. So she just, she's very tall anyway, and she just looks really
wild.
tall.
It's a
great.
cartoonish vision.
Jafar.
How high. Yeah. Or to me, it looked like one of those people in the parades that walk around and they're 10 feet taller than
she's not
everybody
that
else.
tall. But...
I was surprised when they later show she sits down on the couch and shows her feet, and it's just, kind of high heels. It's not like anything. But
that's
anyway,
so funny. You actually thought she was on stilts. No, she's just a tall woman.
It was a sight.
When she first came out, though, Norma Desmond wasn't my first reference. I knew who she was, but because of how she talks and her body shape, the first thing that popped in my head was actually Jane Lynch was in Mrs. Maisel, and she played this aging comic, and she dressed like this, and they look similar. Yeah. So when she first came out, I was like, oh my God, she looks like Jane Lynch. And then it was, this is obviously Norma Desmond.
This is how older women in show business dressed at some point. And yes, at first I'm going, okay, are they doing a Norma Desmond thing? And then throughout the episode, it becomes very obvious. So I feel like this is one we have to explain briefly to the younger listeners. Sunset Boulevard
is on Broadway right now. If anybody...
Not everybody's into it. Sunset Boulevard is a movie from the 50s where Gloria Swanson played Norma Desmond. It's the movie that the line, "I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeVille," comes from.
Yes.
DeMille, yes. Cecil B. DeMille. It's all about this older movie star literally losing her mind.
Right. And she has a butler that caters to her every whim, which is kind of what French Stewart is doing as her agent. And then there's a reporter who is there to tell her story.
Yeah, a writer.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is Sunset Boulevard. And the musical currently on Broadway has Nicole Scherzinger, who's been nominated for a Tony. This is a reimagined, kind of stripped down, really dark version. I mean, the show is dark anyway, but this is it's totally different. They do this thing where they go outside of the theater. The opening number is there's a camera guy who is outside filming the narrator of the show.
That they do in the award shows and stuff now has trickled into the Broadway thing.
But it is and there's this whole area of the street that's all cordoned off and blocked off, because a lot of times the ones from the award shows are pre-taped. But this is not. They do it live 8 shows a week, which is just amazing. But anyway.
But so this is a full-on Sunset Boulevard parody. The show you mentioned, 97 it came out?
Yes.
So this was 47 years after Sunset Boulevard.
And Glenn Close maybe would have been doing Sunset Boulevard in the revival on Broadway at this time.
Interesting. Okay. But certainly, I think even now outside of theater circles, it's that old black and white movie that's the main version of it for a lot of people. But regardless, just putting that out there for the youngsters that maybe wouldn't know about it, because they're really gonna, trade in that sort of cultural reference. But anyway, the other sort of subtrope or cliche that I like that it references is the sort of small town version of the sort of second string celebrity appearances. When French Stewart is taking the phone call, he's like, "Good news, you are going to get to throw out the first pitch at the old timers ball game," or something. It's I feel like that goes along with a lot of these. It's okay, now that you're famous, quote unquote, okay, they're going to need you at the supermarket. Even that's what Earl Sinclair, the dinosaur, had to do in our last episode, so we get that subtrope. I thought it was funny. There's a thing they keep going back to with Joseph Gordon-Levitt has got his two friends or classmates or whatever, kind of bothering him at school about, is this person related to you, that person on the news?
One of those kids is, I gotta look, he looked kind of familiar. I was like, oh, that's a kid I've seen.
Was he the one that talked like a newsie? Because that's what I wrote down. That kid is like, yeah, it's on the news and suddenly you're too cool for us. Hey, what's the story with you?
But aren't they in Rutherford, New Jersey? Is that why?
I don't know. I don't know where the show takes place, but that kid was just like, he was like the son of the cool teacher from Boy Meets World.
Boy Meets World.
With the Joey Buttafuoco accent. I have a note that Dick dresses like a grown-up Screech. In the middle of this episode, he's wearing like what I would describe as a chili pepper red shirt, just this really hot, loud, button-up red shirt, suspenders, and like a crazy busy tie.
Well, wasn't he trying to get attention? Because he normally doesn't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense because now that you mention it, he wears like sweaters and stuff most of the time.
He dresses like a professor. Yeah.
Okay. So it's in this middle part. His way of like, drawing
He's
more attention to himself.
He's dressing like French Stewart.
Yeah. I guess that's his show business persona.
Right.
Dressing like Screech. We get the other Sunset Boulevard reference when she says, it's the planets that got small, right? Because the famous line from Sunset Boulevard is like, I'm still big. It's the pictures that got small.
Right, exactly. But wasn't it, she didn't say it though. French Stewart, Harry said it. It's not her that's gotten too big.
Okay.
It's the planet that's gotten smaller.
Yes. And then we get the very silly moment
because he is the one that as her fame starts to fade, she's a little kind of disgruntled about it at first, but then it's like, okay, that's done. He's the one that's clinging to it.
Right. Okay. And he, like you said, he sort of plays the part of the butler in Sunset Boulevard, trying to like shield her from reality. We get the very silly moment of this confrontation between French Stewart and Mark Hamill. French Stewart goes and tries to like, I don't know if he's trying to kidnap Mark Hamill or what, but Mark Hamill traps him in the closet. And then we get, just like Wings, we get like the scene of Sally and Dick back at home, and Sally's kind of down in the dumps.
Right.
And Dick has to go like, like you do all this good stuff. Like you're still, that's when he references being trapped in the box. He's like, you defeated the evil doppelganger when, I was trapped in a box. And, it's the same exact fame as a fickle friend ending. And it's like, we're no worse off than we started. And then it ends with, like French Stewart told the paper that they were aliens, I guess.
Right. So he, like I said, he was the one that was like clinging to this fame idea. And so then at the very end, they usually end the episodes where one or more of them are sitting on the roof looking up at the stars or their home planet or whatever. And this time they're reading the paper, and French Stewart isn't on the roof with them. He's standing in the window making these weird faces like, oh, you think it's over, but it's not over yet. And then he says something to that effect, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then they read the paper. She's really an alien from outer space. And it's talking about it like in a desperate attempt to cling to fame. She has her people tell us that
that's what it is. So, because I was wondering, like, how is this going to work now?
Right.
Like,
and he's just like, French Stewart's just grinning from ear to ear, and the other three are like, are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah. So this one, again, like you said at the beginning, we have like a nice overlap with these middle ones. The Wings and the Third Rock from the Sun are definitely giving us that sort of like, this is what happens when you do something and get famous quickly and let it go to your head. Right. And I guess that stuff does happen.
Sure. Read any interview with any kid that's gone viral, right? Like it has not been
the one about the corn.
Oh, that little kid. But I think none of them has it been an all pleasant experience, right? Because public commentary, people are awful.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've shared with you just being in the public eye in my tiny little TV station when I worked in television. Like, people would come up to me in the grocery store and be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so much smaller than I thought. Like, you look fat on TV." And they thought that was like a nice thing to say. Like, you know, I know that it's just like the first thing that pops in their mind, and they're seeing this person that they recognize and they have no filter. But like, all of us would talk about like the thick skin you have to get when you go out in public. And you just think about that for some of these, you know, viral folks where it's, you know, mine was 3 people in Publix over the course of a year. You know what I mean? This is like everywhere you go for a period of time, and on like your email and your inbox, and like, you know, your DMs are totally inundated, and you can't post anything anymore because people comment on it publicly. Like, that's just, all the only thing that's out there, you know, so much of what's out there is negativity, and that's just really hard. And so in these cases, we had it being a fickle friend because it went away.
Yeah.
But
not haunted you for the rest of your day.
Yeah, not it cuts twice. You know what I mean?
All right. Well, now we're going to move back to the sort of wishy-washy going on TV version of all of this. Let's discuss 30 Rock.
Season 4, Episode 7, Dealbreakers Talk Show number 0001.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that we did Third Rock and 30 Rock.
Right, and
after each
2
other.
Jane Curtins. I'm enjoying the parallels in the cast and titles of these episodes and shows.
Here's the thing. We've talked about 30 Rock a bunch of times. I was all in on this. I watched the whole thing when it was on, and probably again afterwards. This Dealbreakers storyline does fit the trope of 15 minutes of fame, but I actually think we picked the wrong episode.
Right. It would have been the earlier episode when she writes the book and all of a sudden gets that extra attention.
Or specifically when, just like these other characters, she goes on a talk show. So do you remember this arc in detail? Because I kind of do. And
No, I don't remember in detail. I remember that it was like a relationship book, right? These were her deal breakers.
But that's not how it starts. It starts with, they have a hit sketch, kind of like Marcelo, or Domingo now on SNL. They have like a runaway success sketch on their TGS sketch show, which is the Dealbreaker Lady, where Jane Krakowski, where Jenna plays this lady, and her catchphrase is, "That's a deal breaker, ladies," but it's written by Liz Lemon.
Right.
And it's her voicing all of her things about men. You know, when a guy doesn't have a box of spring and his mattress is on the floor, that's a deal breaker, ladies, right? But so the way it plays out is that the sketch and the character are a huge success. Jenna gets called onto a talk show, and I think Liz Lemon says kind of offhand, like, "Well, why are you going on? I wrote this stuff. These are all my ideas." And she's like, "Oh, you're right. You should come on with me too." And so the two of them, Jenna and Liz, Tina Fey and Jane Krakowski, go on this daytime talk show together. People in the audience start asking the Dealbreaker Lady, who is ostensibly Jenna because she plays her, all of these questions. What should I do about my boyfriend? Blah, blah, blah. And then Liz Lemon starts cooking, starts going like, "That's a deal breaker. And up, get him out of here." And then like on every 4th or 5th one, she'll go like, "Nope, I think you guys are going to make it," So it's like she becomes a hit, just like Sally from Third Rock, that she is like this relationship expert. That leads to her getting the book. And then Jack Donaghy has the idea to synthesize it and make the TV show. And so that brings us to the episode that we're currently on, where they're getting ready to do this TV show. So at a glance, it seemed like, 15 minutes of fame. Let's do
like
that
this
episode.
Is when it's up.
But
really, or when it gets to her.
Yeah. Like it just ends up that this becomes more about the funny foibles of them trying to put on a TV show. And it was really that early episode, which is actually called Kidney Now. It's the A story is Jack Donaghy getting his kidney from Alan Alda.
Yeah.
But that's the episode where you really get that trope of like, oh my God, Liz Lemon is blowing up. She's everywhere. We got to capitalize capitalize on this. We got to get you an agent. She has the agent that's the little kid. I remember there was 2 shows, 30 Rock and Louie, that both at the same time had the same exact joke of...
Ejacked joke. Yes, exactly.
Had the same exact joke of their agents being played by teenagers. And it's like a joke on, I guess, if you're like a sort of...
Because they're so young.
Yeah, that if you're not like a super successful person and you're getting your first agent, they pawn you off on some
like
really
the brand
young...
new kid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
So all of that is set.
But also, I think it is like what this has in common with the other episodes that we've done on this is the flame out.
Yes. It's a little bit of a deliberate flame out. It's not like the others where it's like her head got too big and it all came crashing down.
No,
it's a little
that she
more
kind of
like
gets into her own head. Well, but she gets into her own head, right?
Well,
because
and Jack
she,
does by accident.
So, exactly. So, like, she is gearing up to do this talk show, you know. You watch any 30 Rock episode, you know, right? That she and Jack, who's played by Alec Baldwin, have this sort of like friendship, mentorship kind of relationship. And so he's sort of, you know, talking to her like he always talks to her, not thinking about her as an on-air personality now. And so he mentions like, is that what you're going to do with your hair?
Yeah.
Maybe we should fix your hair.
Well, what's happened
Are you going to wear your glasses?
Devin Banks has gotten into his head.
Right.
Will Arnett, Forte or Arnett?
Will Arnett.
Will Arnett plays his arch nemesis, the equally gravelly voiced Devin Banks, his rival executive. And so he's gotten in his head being like, if this show doesn't work out, it was your idea, you're going down.
I'm going to take you down with it. Exactly. And so, but even before that, he's just talking to Lemon like he talks to Lemon, and he mentioned something about like, are you going to wear your glasses? Are you going to keep your hair like that?
We'll
Now,
pay
whatever,
for
it's
LASIK.
fine. Yeah. So then after Devin gets in his head, he goes back and he kind of reiterates these things. And now Liz starts to think like, oh, maybe I should do these things. Like maybe I need to. She starts to get nervous about the pressure of being on air instead of behind the camera.
Yeah. And we get, even though, you know, maybe it's more of the arc than I was giving it credit for, because we do get the glow up, and I'm putting that in quotes,
right,
because for Liz Lemon, it's sort of a glow down.
Yes.
At the beginning of this show, I'm literally staring at the screen going like, yeah, I guess it's nothing new, but like Tina Fey was very attractive at this time, you know, and by the end of the show, I'm sitting there going like, boy, they really succeeded in making her look terrible.
Yeah, they gave her, like she has a line where she goes, I had a haircut. Actually, I had 3 because the first 2 were awful.
Yeah.
And this third one is pretty bad. She's got sort of asymmetrical bangs that are too short on all parts of the asymmetry.
It's a little bit of the look we were talking about.
Exactly. And then they do the spiky things at the end, but they didn't give her enough layers, so it doesn't spike out early enough. It only spikes out at the very bottom, and they flat ironed the rest of it. So it doesn't fit her face shape.
Yeah, she's got too much eye makeup on, and she comes in. The one thing that they have to do is record promos,
right?
And so they have her in front of a green screen, and they're calling out. It's Frank, Scott Adsit, and Alec Baldwin are behind the camera calling out, you know, dance around a little bit, give us a wave, give us a smile, blow us a kiss,
right? All
and
these
she's
like
being so
things.
awkward, and this reminded me of maybe my favorite 30 Rock scene ever from one of the early episodes where Jack Donaghy is the one that has to go on TV. They're making a video. I forget what the context is, but she's helping him make a video, and he's getting self-conscious. He's going, oh, gee, I don't know what to do with my hands. I never thought about that before.
Remember this.
And then they cut to him. It's like take 74, and he's holding 2 coffee mugs, each in one hand. And he goes, this feels good. This feels natural.
This is what I need.
Yeah. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And so this is not...
That's hilarious, because what it brought back stuck in my mind was that mom jeans commercial they did on SNL.
Yeah.
And the way that she was moving with her like shoulders kind of hunched up and like she has like T-Rex arms because she's uncomfortable. She does that in, you know, I feel like that same body language was happening in that mom jeans commercial.
Yeah. And then we get a lot of jokes about the high def, right? Reminding us that it's 2007 or whatever.
It's 2009.
All right.
And they have the high definition cameras and they say, okay, just for laughs, go stand in front of the high definition camera. And all of a sudden you can like see a Band-Aid on her face and like all these hairs and a giant mole.
They do all this makeup. And then they have the joke where when Scott Adsit walks by, Frank, the producer, they have like an old man walk by in the
shirtless
monitor.
Old man, literally doddering.
Right. So they're making, it's just so funny because now it's like, HD just means that like it doesn't look crappy, you know.
That's
but at this
true,
time,
but I
it was
remember
like, HD crystal clear, man.
No, but I remember, and this is no joke, right? Because all of us who were on TV in the run up to this had to change our makeup.
Oh, sure,
because
I can see that.
The idea about contouring and all of that, nobody was doing that until HD came out because you had to completely erase your face and build a new one in order for it to look good on these cameras because they showed everything. I was 25 when I left television and I had wrinkles on HD cameras. And so all of my colleagues were going to get plastic surgery. Like the amount of facelifts that happened the summer before we went HD at my station is insane. The men and the women.
Well, the final HD joke is, of course, Alec Baldwin's,
Hunt from Red
virility.
October. Yeah.
They show young Alec Baldwin from Hunt for Red October or Prelude to a Kiss or something in the monitor, looking like he's 29 years old.
Right. Oh, and Kenneth was a Muppet. I liked that too.
Yeah. So it's just a funny idea that they're making the joke that an HD monitor is so accurate that it like looks into your soul and shows you as you really are. And then, I guess we should mention, meanwhile, it's 30 Rock's always hard to talk about because there's, A, B, C, D, E, and F stories. Right. But the one that does play into this a little bit is Judah Freelander's character. Is he Frank? I've been saying Frank all the time.
Yeah, I think he's Frank.
Then who's...
He is Pete.
Okay. So Frank, the schlubby writer guy, they're doing the other trope of switching personalities, just like when Jerry Seinfeld and Kramer switched personalities, or because they switched apartments. Liz had left Judah Freelander in charge. I guess they didn't switch.
No,
Liz
it was
didn't
just
take on his
qualities. She became Jenna.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, but he starts turning into
Liz,
even down to like I'm wearing a cardigan,
he's wearing the sweater.
He takes off his hats and his hair looks like hers when it's all curly.
Yeah, and he's going, "Oh, you dummies, won't do it now. I'll be in my office trying to have it all." Doing the whole Tina Fey thing.
He says nards at some point or nerds at some point.
Yeah. And so just like you said, meanwhile, Liz is becoming like Jenna. She's becoming a crazy prima donna who's all insecure and out of her mind, and everyone has to figure out...
Locking herself in a dressing room.
Yeah, they have to figure out how to coddle her, how to get her onto the show.
So Jack seeks out advice from Jenna.
Yeah.
And Jenna says like the most profound thing ever. I'm like, as a person who does community theater, I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I need. I need someone to tell me every 15 minutes how amazing I'm doing. So Jenna makes this point. She's like, she has the pressure of being on air. And that means like she's on camera. She is the one that everyone's associating with everything that's happening.
She's on camera. Because one of their jokes is that Liz is so in her head now that she can't say the word camera because she's just like forgotten.
She's like, how do I say that? Is it camera? Yeah. And then Jenna has that weird accent like Moira from Schitt's Creek does, Madonna. And she's like camera, and she says the same thing. But so she's just like she needs constant, affirmation that it's okay. Like that camera staring you in the face, that camera staring you in the face is very intimidating. It is the entire world watching you. So yes. And so Jack's like, okay, I can do that. I can coddle her. And then he goes and he tries and she's like, you can't do that to me. You forget I do this all the time. Like, I know what this is. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And we get Liz Lemon doing the Willem Dafoe from Spider-Man thing where she's talking into the mirror,
that's right.
doing her like split personalities of like, maybe I'll be okay. You're worthless. You know? And then, and
Alec Baldwin standing behind her. And when we see the reaction shot, so like when they do the mirror character, it's like Gollum, right?
Yes.
She's like, you are horrible. And we can see both her, Liz Lemon talking to herself, and Jack looking at Liz Lemon talking to herself in the mirror. And those shots, like his face, like all acting is reacting, right? Like spot on. Way to go, Alec Baldwin. Because like his faces when she's like, you're a monster. No one will ever think of you, but it'll be okay. You know, and she's doing these moments. He is just like, whoa.
Yeah. And so they never really sort it out. Like they sort it out.
Because she quits. Yeah. He cancels the show.
And Jack says, don't worry, I sold the promos that we shot, or the opening titles, to, you know, the like Guatemalan soap opera market or something.
No,
or it's
it
not
was
foreign.
just, it's just there. Yeah, exactly. It's whatever's playing on the TVs on the TV shows.
Yeah.
And so he sold it to like that department or whatever. And so then they do, they have on like a Young and the Restless or something. And the Liz is the tag on the show is her at home watching the Young and the Restless or whatever, and she is on the TV behind the two characters that are making out.
Yeah. So this one didn't give us that thing, like we said, of like she gets a big ego, it goes to her head. We're sort of getting, you know, this is essentially like part 3 of a 3-episode arc that is the 15 minutes of fame for Liz Lemon, this Dealbreakers storyline.
And we do, at the very beginning, she is on a high. So I think where that she gets a big head probably would have been the previous episode where she was like, had her success on the talk show and now is like making the deals and all is great. That's probably where the big head came in, because at the beginning of this episode, she's like, I'm gonna eat some ham. She does that, like, she does Everything's Coming Up Roses, but does like parody language, like parody words on top of it for her own personal, like happy, everything's coming up.
She's doing a little
Liz.
bit of a Jess from New Girl.
Everything's coming up, Liz.
Yeah. So, okay, looking back over these, what do we think? Again, interesting overlap. Benefits, drawbacks, pluses, minuses. What do we think?
Well, I liked that the middle two were, you know, really right on the trope, like right exactly, you know, what you're thinking of when we said, let's watch 15 Minutes of Fame episodes. I liked that those two lined up so much. And you know what? I think I probably wouldn't have liked this lineup as much if they all lined up in exactly the same way. I know we like it when that happens sometimes, but I think this trope would have been boring to watch that same arc over and over again. And I like what 30 Rock did with it, that they broke up kind of each phase of the 15 minutes of fame, each of the 5 minutes of 15, if you will, into its own show. Like, I think that's a smart way to break this up, especially when you're, you know, a more modern sitcom that you have like 15 storylines going on.
And you don't
once.
want to burn up the whole thing.
Exactly.
You
can kind of, so I think that's a really good idea. And I like that they did that. I enjoyed the 30 Rock episode. I think maybe my favorite one to watch was the funny things. Like there's always a lot of antics in Third Rock from the Sun, and I appreciate the antics.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, in terms of that sort of, you know, like you said, what we were kind of hoping for when we cast our net for this trope, I'm going to say, hopefully to your delight, that the Wings episode is my MVP.
It's a Wings redemption episode.
Yeah, and again, I'll stand by everything I said, that Steven Weber is, I'm not, you know, voting
Stop
for
dogging
him for
on
president.
him. You've said enough.
But I really liked how that, you know, it just, I mean, it was almost it was almost like a Full House level of like, oh, this guy's got his head's getting a little too big for his britches or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he gets his comeuppance, and the whole thing was very kind of cartoony and silly and fun. And then in terms of just like straight, like the 30 Rock, I think is just on another, on another level in terms of the, just the quality of the writing and everything. This is season 4. 30 Rock, so it's still, I don't think 30 Rock ever got bad.
I would
but
say they're still trugging, yeah.
Yeah, they're at the top of their game. They're doing really well. And yeah, all of that stuff of like what would happen if Liz Lemon had the pressure of being on camera herself and everything that went along to that. Yeah, made it really fun. Good times. So much for the 15 minutes of fame. What are we talking about next week?
Next week, it's our 100th episode, Jay. We're going to watch I Love Lucy, Season 4, Episode 3, Lucy Cries Wolf, Frasier, Season 5, Episode 4, The 100th Show, The Middle, Season 5, Episode 4, The 100th, and Blackish, Season 5, Episode 4, Purple Rain. I guess you can kind of do the math there and see what happens. Every Season 5, Episode 4 about is the 100th.
Yep, except in the old days when things were crazy with the 60 episodes per season and whatnot. Anyway, all 100th episodes next week, and until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.